Aloha, everyone. I wanted to share the results of a security assessment I conducted utilizing the Nmap network scanning utility with service version detection TAC SV and default script execution TAC SC against the target IP address 192.168.56.101. This enumeration of network services revealed a significant security vulnerability associated with the OpenSSH daemon operating on TCP port 22. Specifically, the identified version 2.9.2 P2 is critically outdated, having been initially released in 2001, giving the root cause of the vulnerability. Given that current OpenSSH versions as of 2425 reside in the 9.x range, this 20-year-old iteration is classified as a weak service. Such an obsolete protocol version precedes numerous security enhancements, including key hardening standards, robust password authentication protocols, and comprehensive brute force protection mechanisms. Its continued operation constitutes a substantial security risk. Further analysis indicates that the Secure Shell protocol, the SSH protocol version 1.99, is in use. This version signifies that backward compatibility with SSH Protocol 1, which is cryptographically broken and considered obsolete, as SH2 protocol represents the current industry standard, which is another root cause of the vulnerability. So port 80 TCP is open and running HTTP on Apache 1.3.20, which is the primary attack surface because it is old and risky as it exposes a public-facing, outdated web service. Apache 1.3.20 is a legacy web server version that predates modern security practices such as secure defaults, hardened modules, and robust input validation. This has been end of life for decades, and its exploits are widely available. This web service is accessible over an unencrypted protocol. All traffic is transmitted in clear text and vulnerable to interception and manipulation. Providing clear text is a root cause for the vulnerability to this attack surface. Port 111 TCP is used by RPC Bind, formerly Port Mapper, which functions as a directory and service mapping mechanism for remote procedure call or RPC services. RPC Bind enables clients to discover the network locations and port numbers of RPC-based services running on a system. From a security perspective, this service discovery capability is significant because it allows attackers to enumerate sensitive network services and identify potential attack vectors, per NIST in 2020. One of the most critical services exposed through RPC Bind is the NFS, or the Network File Systems. NFS enables remote clients to access shared file systems over a network, and its operation relies on several supporting RPC services, including MountD, StatD, and RQuoteAd. Per Oracle, the Mount daemon MountD is responsible for handling client requests to mount exported directories from an NFS server. When a client attempts to mount a shared directory, it first queries RPC Bind on port 111 to locate the MountD service. Once contacted, MountD verifies the export permissions and, if authorized, allows the file system to be mounted. This design becomes dangerous when misconfigured, as MountD often relies on an IP-based trust and lacks robust authentication mechanisms. If exploited, attackers may mount sensitive directories and gain unauthorized access to critical system files. Such access can allow adversaries to read password files, insert SSH keys, modify startup scripts, and establish persistent system access. Per Bell and Bell 2017, the status monitor daemon, the StatD, supports NFS by monitoring the status of clients and servers and assisting with the file lock recovery after crashes or reboots. Historically, StatD has been associated with multiple security weaknesses, including buffer overflow vulnerabilities. Because StatD frequently runs with root privileges and listens on dynamically assigned ports, it can be remotely triggered without authentication in poorly secured environments. Successful exploitation may allow attackers to execute arbitrary code, perform denial of service attacks, or escalate privileges. And this came from the CERT Coordination Center in 2001. The Remote Quota Daemon, or RQuota-D, provides disk quota information to NFS, clients reporting usage, limits, and consumption tactics. While RQuota-D appears less critical than mounted or StatD, it exposes file systems metadata that can assist attackers during reconnaissance. Vulnerabilities in RQuota-D have included memory corruption flaws that can leak user identities, directory structures, and disk usage patterns. When combined with other NFS services, this information can facilitate targeted exploitation and support broader systems compromise. Per Stallings in 2018, when RPC bind 111 TCP is exposed, alongside MountD, StatD, and RQuota-D, the security risk increases significantly. MountD enables file systems access, StatD manages file locks, and RQuota-D reports disk usage information. Among these, the RPC bind and MountD combination represents the most common and severe attack path, as it can directly lead to unauthorized access to the underlying file systems and eventual full system compromise, per the NIST in 2020. Port 139 here, TCP, is important because it exposes a legacy file sharing service that was not designed with modern threat models in mind. When combined with outdated software and weak access controls, NetBIOS and Samba services can provide attackers with a direct and reliable path to a system compromise. This is why this port is emphasized during pen testing. On port 443, TCP is conventionally used for HTTPS, or the Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure, which is designed to provide confidentiality, integrity, and authentication for web traffic through cryptographic protocols such as SSL and TLS. Now, in modern systems, HTTPS relies on secure versions of TLS. We're talking about the transport layer security. However, older systems such as our Keyoptrix Level 1 often support deprecated SSL protocols, including SSL v2. The presence of SSL v2 enabled on port 443 is critical security weakness because SSL v2 is also cryptographically broken and vulnerable to multiple attacks. SSL v2 lacks protection against man-in-the-middle attacks, does not properly authenticate handshake messages, and uses weak or export-grade ciphers that can be decrypted with minimal effort by modern standards. As a result, encrypted traffic can be intercepted, decrypted, or modified by an attacker without detection. In vulnerable configurations, attackers can exploit SSL v2 to downgrade secure connections, recover session keys, or harvest sensitive information such as credentials, session cookies, and application data. This risk amplified when HTTPS is hosting critical services such as web-based authentication portals or administrative interfaces. Consequently, SSL v2 has been formally deprecated and prohibited in modern security standards. In the context of penetration testing, the detection of SSL v2 on port 443 signals a legacy system with outdated cryptographic practices, indicating a high likelihood of additional vulnerabilities. This makes HTTPS with SSL v2 enabled a high priority finding during reconnaissance and vulnerability assessment, as it undermines the fundamental trust mode of secure communication. So this image displays the remote procedure call, or the RPC-based service that we enumerated using Nmap to assess the exposure of legacy network services associated with the Linux system. The command nmap tacpn tacp 111 and 2049 tactac script equals nfs rpc 192.168.56.101 was executed to identify RPC and network file systems, again the NFS related services, with the tacpn flag ensuring that host discovery did not rely on ICMP responses. This approach is appropriate for environments where ping probes may be blocked or filtered, as explained to me by Lion in 2024. The scan results indicated that port 111 TCP, which was the RPC bind, and port 2049 TCP, the NFS, were in a filtered state. A filtered port suggests that probe packets are being dropped or blocked by the target system, or an intermediary filtering mechanism, rather than the service being explicitly closed. Importantly, the host was confirmed to be operational, indicating that the absence of responses does not equate to the absence of the RPC or the NFS service. This behavior is consistent with the legacy Linux distributions, such as the Keyoptrix Level 1, which often rely on dynamic RPC port allocation. In such systems, RPC bind functions as a directory service that maps RPC program numbers to dynamically assigned ports, allowing services such as mountd, statd, and rquotad to operate on ephemeral ports rather than fixed, well-known ports. When these dynamically assigned ports are not explicitly scanned, enumeration scripts may fail to receive the service information if the services are actively running. Furthermore, many RPC and NFS services traditionally communicate over UDP, whereas the initial enumeration relied on TCP-based probes. Because modern security tools frequently default to TCP scanning, RPC services operating over UDP may remain undetected unless explicitly targeted. This limitation highlights a known challenge when assessing older network architectures using contemporarily scanning techniques. So this image shows an Nmap scam using HTTP enumeration. Script failed to return results because the target system did not respond to ICMP echo requests. By default, Nmap performs host discovery prior to conducting port scans or executing service enumeration scripts. When a host suppresses ICMP responses, Nmap may incorrectly classify the system as offline and terminates the scan prematurely. To address this limitation, host discovery was disabled using the TACPN option, which instructs Nmap to assume the target is reachable regardless of ICMP responsiveness. This adjustment allowed the HTTP enumeration scripts to execute against ports 80 and 43, enabling further inspection of web services. The need to disable host discovery is common when assessing legacy systems or intentionally hardened environments where administrators block ICMP traffic as a basic defense measures. And this was told to me by the Scarphone and Supaya in 2021. The absence of network layer responses does not necessarily indicate that a system or its services are unavailable. The show mount TAC-E command is used above here to enumerate exported network file systems, the NFS directories, by querying the mount daemon, mountd, through the remote procedure called RPC framework. The error message RPC unable to receive indicates the client was unable to successfully communicate with the RPC service on the target host. This failure does not indicate that NFS is absent. However, it does suggest that one or more of the following conditions are present. RPC services are filtered or blocked by firewall rules, preventing communication on port 111 TCP or the dynamically assigned RPC ports. Mount D is not reachable even though RPC bind may be present. ICMP filtering or packet handling restrictions interfere with RPC responses. NFS is configured but restricted, allowing access only from trusted hosts. As demonstrated earlier through Nmap results, both port 111 TCP, RPC bind, and 2049 TCP, the NFS, were reported as filtered, which is consistent with this error. Filtered ports typically indicate that packets are being silently dropped rather than explicitly rejected, preventing RCP-based enumeration tools from receiving responses. Again, I'm learning all this through Lion 2024. The SMB enumeration attempt targeted ports 139 TCP, which is the NetBIOS session service, and 445 TCP, the Microsoft Directory service, using Nmap's SMB discovery and enumeration scripts. These ports are traditionally associated with file sharing, user authentication, and inter-host communication in both Windows and legacy Linux environments. The Nmap scan confirmed that the host at 192.168.56.101 is reachable. However, both SMB-related ports were reported as filtered, indicating that the packets sent to these ports were blocked or silently dropped rather than explicitly accepted or rejected. A filtered state suggests the presence of host-based firewall rules, packet filtering mechanisms, or TCP wrappers that prevent direct interaction with the SMB services. As a result, Nmap was unable to retrieve share listings, user accounts, or operating system details through SMB-based scripts. So now I want to talk about the flaw hypothesis method. The flaw hypothesis methodology, or FHM, is structured penetration testing approach that emphasizes analytical reasoning over automated exploitation. Rather than immediately attacking discovered services, the tester formulates a hypothesis about how identified system characteristics, configurations, and service versions may introduce security weaknesses. These hypotheses are then systematically tested through controlled validation techniques such as enumeration, configuration review, and exploit research. So the phases of flaw hypothesis are information gathering, so collecting detailed data about the target system, including open ports, running services, versions, operating system details, and network architecture. Flaw identification, which is analyzing collected data to identify outdated software, insecure configurations, trust relationships, or legacy protocols that may introduce vulnerabilities. Hypothesis formulation, developing reasoned assumptions about how identified flaws could be exploited based on known attack patterns, historical vulnerabilities, and system behavior. Hypothesis testing, finally, validating assumptions through targeted enumeration, proof of concept testing, or exploit verification while remaining within the authorized scope, of course. So here is our vulnerability map. As you can see here, it relates to what we discussed earlier. The 22 TCP port, the status is open. It means a very high risk level because it is outdated. The 80 TCP port, also critical because it's multiple historical CVEs already associated with it. It's already been attacked. It has an abuse attack directory. And the status here, again, is open. It is running on the Apache HTTP, which is open. The 443 TCP port, it is an HTTPS, so it remains high, but it has been deprecated. It's a deprecated SSL TLS, but it is still open. These next two are filtered, the 111 TCP port and the 2049 TCP port, the NFS that we discussed earlier. Those also remain high because they are filtered also. They are service discovery for the RPC NFS daemons, and for the 2049 TCP is a potential unauthorized file system access via trust-based controls. Appreciate you listening. If you have any questions, I'm always available. Aloha.